Board priorities, superintendent goals, Susan Goldhammer from MSBA.
Hi, guys. First, I'm going to take roll here just to make sure. So our leadership development team would normally be the ones presenting to you, but I present with them a lot. But I'm also frightened of them. And you get CBM credit. They're way more organized than I am. And so I have to take roll so that I have a documentation that you are all present for your CBM credit. So David Foster.
Yes.
Isara Garcia. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Rick Gilmore.
Yes.
Kim Miller.
Yes.
Kenneth Reeder.
Twinkle Toes Reader.
Oh, Twinkle Toes Reeder. Twinkle Toes. We'll put that to good use. Phil in. Okay. And Latoya.
Latanya.
Latanya.
Yes,
Latanya.
Latanya.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So rumor has it that you guys are relatively new to school board service. You know, that's and there are some amazing benefits to that. A young board is what we call it, an energetic board. And there are some challenges to that because you don't have the experience that having, you know, some people say, well, it's good to have an all-young board. Some are like, it's good to have a board that's all had at least 10 years of experience. And the reality is it's usually a mixture of that. But sometimes historical knowledge or historical mess-ups are useful to the process. So David thought it might be a good idea just to talk a little bit about what does a good board look like, okay? How many of you have been on a governance board before? Okay, good. Of this size? It's similar in size?
Not this,
Similar, okay.
Not this many employees.
It's good, and I can tell that just because I did watch some of your board meetings to kind of get a feel. That I could tell that several of you are asking very good governance level questions. Like it isn't new to you to be on governance. Most of my school board members, it is. Most of my school board members that I train have never been in a governance board or in a management position where they're supervising, 5 or more employees. And so the concept of delegation, the concepts of what is your lane, what is your responsibility is just new to them. Okay, they ran because they love their school, and to a T, almost all of my school board members they're helpers, they're doers. But they're not always coming with a governance background. And so that's really part of the challenge that MSBA has, and it's kind of our opportunity, is to try and educate our board members on what does good governance mean, okay? Because we have seen that if good governance is missing in a district, it does actually impact student achievement, okay? This is one of our favorite quotes. Effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual respect. That is what an effective board is. Now, we've got lots of school boards in the country. But not all school boards are effective. And that's really the focus that we're trying to go on. Now, I always like to point out that lead as a united team doesn't mean we don't disagree, okay? And I have concerns that that's how that's interpreted in people's heads, is that we're all lockstep all the time, there's no disagreements. That is incorrect. And in fact, I think in some respects that's dangerous. You guys will be grappling with some incredibly difficult issues, and you are all intelligent people, and I think you all come at it from different perspectives, and I would be absolutely shocked if you didn't have different opinions on priorities. And in fact, if you don't, it either means that you've stepped back and you're not really putting your skin in the game, or you haven't really thought through it. okay? Because the reality is what Dr. Kendra put up there was, I mean, that's some difficult stuff. And I'm going to have a graphic here with an elephant, but that's a big elephant. And it's, achievement, student engagement, staff engagement, safety, culture, climate, all of that. There isn't a school district out in the country that isn't grappling with these same issues and finding the perfect way for it to work. Entire PhDs are written on just one of the lines that she has up there, okay? And so it's important, the process is important, okay? Yes, at the end of the day, I want you guys to have a plan, and I want you to feel that you've had input in the plan. The plan might not be exactly how you would have written it if it was just you, but that is the point, that is the goal, is that we at least get you guys working together. And that's because you all run as individuals. You run for the school board as individuals. People ask you, what are you going to do when you go on the school board? And, I do board training. I've been at MSBA since 1999, so when God was a teenager. And so I've done tons of training, and we are in the season where new school board members have come in and suddenly they realize that they can't do anything, okay? And that's traumatic for some of them that made all kinds of promises when they were campaigning that they were gonna do X, Y, and Z. That's just not how it rolls, right? And so how it really rolls is you're all around the table. I don't like that graphic, but they can't find one with 8. So the superintendent needs to be at the table with you. But this is the hard work, and it's incredibly difficult. I've noticed ever since I started at MSBA, but particularly in this political climate, where it seems like the cult of the individual is valued more than who's the person that made the compromises, who got the deal done, and the thing that I look to, and we might have completely different political ideas on whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, but the compromise made by Congress on the gun bill was monumental, not necessarily because what's in it, although there's good, depending on what you like or don't like, there's good and bad in it, but the fact that somebody sat down and compromised. And that's huge with our US Congress, because they've been for over 20 years super split. And so we saw a little bit of the moving of the needle, and that people from both sides, bipartisan, sat down and they managed to come up with something, okay? And that's really the hard work. It is not hard at all to go out, get on social media, go to church, go to wherever you go to the bar and state how you feel about something. But that's not going to get a darn thing done, okay? Effective boards come around the table and chew on stuff. And so that's what we're talking about today, is effective boards. And there's actually been research now, and this is some pretty legitimate research. Notice the first one. Okay, when I first started at MSBA, we pretty much just had the Lighthouse study. And there were 2 versions of it. One was based in, it was funded by the Iowa Association of School Boards. What they actually did was they researched boards in other states, so that there wasn't that kind of bias. But I kind of, when I got it, I first thought, okay, yeah, so the Kale Association's telling me to eat kale. That's not a surprise. The Iowa School Boards Association is telling us that school boards are effective. But the point of the initial research in that Lighthouse study was that was a time when there was a lot of talk about getting rid of school boards completely, okay? And in fact, in Missouri at that time, if you look at those dates, that's when charter schools were first passed for St. Louis and Kansas City. There was a lot of talk about, school boards are in the way, and they're just adding politics to this, and we're not getting the student achievement results we want, so let's just get them off the table. And so we wanted to do some research. The Iowa Association of School Boards wanted to do some research on, do boards impact education? Can they impact education? Of course, it's almost impossible to prove causation, but there's definitely, this study proved correlation. School districts that were achieving, despite all obstacles, their school boards had similar characteristics. Now, like I said, okay, School Boards Association funded the study. But that has been replicated in other studies, if you notice. And if you ever are interested in reading these, it is kind of interesting how they did their research, et cetera. But I'm not going to go into that. What I am going to go into is the good news is they're, the studies are aligning. That always makes me nervous when you get one study says this and one study says that. And so now what do you do? The good news is and that's good because it's validating, right? So these are the factors for effective school boards. Effective school boards that can move the needle on student achievement in their district despite the obstacles. Okay? The first two we always talk about together because they are very related. Guided by a clear mission, goals, and measures, primary focus is on student learning performance. Okay, we're going to talk about this one in a little bit more depth, but the mission, goals, and measures, that's what Dr. Kendra here was talking to you about. Okay, she's trying to get good measures for you in front of you so that you can measure, but this is guided by, and that your primary focus is on student learning performance. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit in depth on what that looks like too based on these studies. Delegate operational decisions to the superintendents. That seems to constantly, particularly with my bright, motivated board members, y'all are doers, and practicing that delegation muscle is absolutely essential, okay? You don't have time to run the district. That's why you hired Dr. Edgar. Okay, and that's why you've hired the rest of the staff. If you're doing your governance work, you have got to delegate to them. Now, alternatively, the flip side of that coin, you have to monitor progress and maintain accountability. That's the board's goal. Okay, so trust but verify, delegate but monitor. Okay, so that is, if you're not monitoring, you don't know if it's getting done. And once again, that's part of your conversation that you just had before lunch is they're putting up some metrics so you have some idea of whether we're moving the needle, okay? Because this is a pretty complex organization, large, lots of moving parts, and it's not like we're putting out cars here. It's much more complicated to put out a well-rounded, success-ready student. Update and use board policies. That's close to my heart, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. But that's definitely, for those of you that went through our board training, board policies is one of your governing documents. Okay, so that's very important. Your legacy actually lives with board policy. If you get off the board, the policies that you adopt remain. Demonstrate ethical and legal practices. As a lawyer, I always said that one should be first. Because if we're not demonstrating ethical and legal, and we're not expecting ethical and legal, then the rest of this, we have a serious trust issue, right? The public has a serious trust issue. But I have to admit that the mission and goals are kind of important, so I will let it be there. Model respectful and collaborative relationships with each other, superintendent, and staff. It's not just do it, but model it. And that is my biggest message to my board members is you need to act as you expect your staff to act, as you expect your students to act, okay? We need to be modeling what it looks like to be engaged. Implement reliable and representative two-way communication with all stakeholders. And that's a really loaded statement there. We're going to dig into it a little bit too. Reliable, representative, two-way, all. Those are important words. And then engage in training and professional development to improve your governance practices, which is, why I am here, because you guys are already working on that one. But research shows these are the things that make your school board effective. Now notice there's nothing in there that says agree on everything all the time. There's nothing in there that says, do as told, immediately as told. You guys are intelligent people, but this is what is a good governing board. Okay? And so that's what we've got. Now, when David said, yeah, come and tell us what it takes to be a good governing board, I could spend 2 hours on each bullet point there. We're not gonna, I don't have time for that, and you guys will probably fall asleep in about 10 minutes. So the engagement, so I can't do that. So we've really, just like your staff has to narrow down what they're focusing on, today we're narrowing the focusing. So I did talk to David and said, okay, I can't do all of this in 2 hours. Why don't you pick a few things for us to focus on? And he did. So we're going to talk, and I think this ties in with your previous presentation on the clear mission, goals, and measures, and the primary focus on student learning performance. Now I want you to go into, you got your little packet in front of you, and there's the PowerPoint, and behind the PowerPoint, this is just part of MSIP 6. This is the leadership part. I didn't want to kill trees for things, and you can go online and get the rest of it, all right? But this is the leadership part of MSIP 6. And as you were told earlier, and I've been here since God was a teenager, so I've been doing school stuff when there was MSIP 4. And then they moved to MSIP 5. So MSIP 4, and I don't even know if your staff remembers that, but they would like send teams in and not just look at your data and ask you questions, but like for a week, there'd be people questioning staff, asking for documents. I mean, it was incredibly stressful for everybody, the staff, the board, everybody, and very time consuming. And one of the complaints was, why are you spending Desi, why are you spending all this time and money and resources if our school is succeeding? You know, some of the schools were like, look, we've got great numbers. Why are you questioning us? And so then the MSIP 5, the new strategy was, well, let's just look at the numbers, okay? And Desi was just gonna focus on the schools whose numbers weren't good. And they were looking at the achievement scores and the graduation rates and the attendance and all of that. Well, then we had schools that were like, wait a minute, the numbers aren't everything, okay? These numbers, what we're testing, what you're looking at doesn't encapsulate all the good stuff that we're doing in the schools. And so then there was a push to change it back somewhat to MSIP 4, and so that's why we're having this, and kudos to your staff, because they could have taken a bye on being the first round out for MSIP 6, but they decided, no, let's do it. We're on it, let's do it. But it's stressful, okay? They're the first ones out of the barn. Everybody in the state's watching to see what's going to be expected of the district, and they didn't come out really early with what they were looking at, which is another issue, but part of the MSIP 6 has a much stronger focus on board leadership, okay? And in fact, you look, school board leadership, the L, okay? These are standards and indicators. Now, I want you to know that not all of these are going to be measured by DESE this fall, okay? That the focus is going to be on the CSIP, and we'll talk about that a second. But if DESE thinks there is a concern, these are the things that DESE is going to be looking at if they come, okay? And I think this is particularly important. I think it also lines up with this research that we've talking about. So they are expecting, DESE is trying to put things in place to ensure that districts are effective or more effective. Okay, and so in fact, L3, if you look at L3, which is on the second page, okay, you've got the standards up at the top. The local board adopts, monitors, and annually reviews the implementation and outcomes of the continuous school improvement plan that focuses on district performance and improvement. Okay, now, those of you that have been around for a while, we used to call this the comprehensive school improvement plan, but they changed it to continuous. Why did they change it to continuous? Why would they do that? Why would they make me change all of those policies that say comprehensive school improvement plan? Why would they do that? You think I'm gonna answer, and I'm not. I'm gonna make you answer.
There's no limit to how much improvement you can have.
That's right. Well, and a lot of what they found was, because state's been requiring the CSIP for forever, but what they're finding is that schools would get one and they'd use it as a doorstop, okay? And then 5 years later, oh, it's time to do that CSIP again, and they'd write another one and use it as a doorstop, and never look at it, monitor it, care about it. And then they wonder why because it's supposed to be a collaborative effort with the community, why the community, everybody's just all confused. What is it? Are we making a doorstop or are we making a plan? And so really they want to emphasize that this is a continuous process. This isn't a one and done thing, okay? And this is emphasizing, look at this, the local board adopts, monitors, and annually reviews the implementation and outcome of the continuous school improvement plan. That is your job. That is nobody else's job. When DESE comes, that's what they are expecting you to do. And this one is measured, okay? The other items, L1, L2, L4, are things that they would look at if there are concerns with your district, but they're not going to this initial fall, okay? But this is the one that is the most important. And so when they start asking questions, we've got to demonstrate that this board is aware of their CSIP, not just aware of it. You've adopted it, you've monitored it, and you've annually reviewed it. Okay, and the monitoring piece is the most difficult part. How do you monitor? Well, first you have to make it monitorable. And so that's why the staff is putting some numbers in, okay? That's why you're going to have a committee where board members are on it, so that you can start digesting it little piece by little piece, okay? Because I have to admit, when I looked at the presentation, I was like, ooh, that's a big elephant. Look at all those numbers, and particularly if you're not data driven, that might be a challenge for you, but that is your job. This is what is expected of you, okay? So needless to say, that aligns with guided by clear mission, goals, and measures. Okay, so I like it when the research and what DESE expects of us line together. It doesn't always happen, but that's good. Now, how do we deal with this monster? Okay, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay, so I know there are boards out there that are like, yeah, CSIP, eyes glaze over. That's lots of information I don't know. And what your staff is trying to do with their plan is to help you digest your CSIP one bite at a time. Okay, but you've got to do the chewing. Okay, it's your job to engage, to think, to ask those governance questions. Okay, not just because that's what DESE's going to be looking for, but because we know that's what an effective board will do. Okay, and because you guys, so many of you don't have too many years under your belt, there's going to be some language that you don't understand, and you need to be like, oh, I don't know that. I don't know what that means. Please explain it to me. Okay, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And in the explaining, we all learn more. Okay, so don't be shy, because you're the one that's supposed to be chewing. Okay, how does an effective board get things done? Okay, so your CSIP is your 5-year plan. That's a big, gigantic elephant that you're not going to, hopefully you'll understand it in this year. You'll be more versed in it. You can talk about it, okay? But you're not going to accomplish all of the goals in that CSIP. It's massive, it's huge, and it's a 5-year plan, okay? And if it's and although I want the goals to be achievable, the goals need to be achievable. Not everything's going to happen, okay? That's why we have a continuous plan, okay? Now it's your job as a board and as as a functioning leadership team to take little bites out of that elephant, okay? And one little bite is the budget. Okay, what do we need? You guys have just passed a budget. What do we need to move the needle on the CSIP? Part of it's a professional development plan that's being put together that the board adopts. What do we need to move the needle? And a big part, and one part that David wanted me to talk about, was the superintendent's evaluation. All right? So we take little bites from the elephant and we process them this way. That's how effective boards operate. Okay? And your challenge is going to be working with your superintendent. It's probably not a challenge, it's probably a privilege to work with your superintendent and to come up with, for your evaluation, some small digestible goals to move the needle. All right, but we're going to get to that. But this is how boards get done. This is the planning. This is the governance stage. And a lot of board members are not comfortable with one or many or maybe even all of these arrows. Okay? But that is the process that is set up in statute. That's the process that we know works. And so as an individual board member, you need to be asking yourself, what do I need and what does the board as a whole need to be able to speak intelligently? What questions do I need to be able to ask to make sure that I understand? Okay? So I wrote the slide, then I spoke to Kendra, and then I thought, well, I'm still going to leave it in. Because monitoring progress to the CSIP is huge, okay? And so the one question is, how does your board know if progress is being made on the CSIP goals? And that is going to be how your meetings in the next 6 months play out, okay? So your staff has committed to, there's going to be a committee, there's going to be presentations at each board meeting, and that is how your board is supposed to be monitoring. Now the question is, how does your board know if progress is made? That's what Kendra was talking to you about, okay? Those measures. And of course, if you're like, I don't know what that acronym means, you've got to raise your hand and say, where did we get that number? That's a perfectly good governance question. Where did we get that number? How trustworthy are these numbers? Have we monitored this before? Okay? That's what monitoring means. And then how often should progress be reported to the board? Now that's something that, because you guys are in MSIP 6, it's going to be in the next 6 months because they know that you're being watched right now. And this is new for everybody. But going forward, come January, once you do the party dance and MSIP 6 is over, your bid's over. Or I guess it isn't necessarily January, you're going to find out, or later in the spring. But the question is, this is supposed to be continuing, right? Then we don't take it and make it a doorstop. This is supposed to be a practice that you continue to do. And that is a question that you guys will need to ask yourself at that point in time, okay? Of course, I think you'll have a better idea in the spring once you've gone through all of this, because you'll have a better idea of what the CSIP is and what the monitoring process looks like. And there's huge parts of the monitoring that the data is only available once a year. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that happens? Y'all look at me like, yeah, whatever. Okay. I'm trying not to scare you right out of board service is what I'm trying not to do. Yes?
Oh, I was just going to say one of our most important goals is to get our kids back in the seats in the school and get our attendance numbers to where they should be. And then the other things will fall in line. The improved test scores, everything is dependent on increasing our student attendance.
So it sounds to me like you've decided kind of what you would like a goal to be. One of those more digestible goals.
The kids can't learn if they're not attended.
And I agree. The tough thing is, and I know that our leadership development staff does all kinds of workshops with boards, and sometimes just coming up with the goal is a learning experience for everybody, okay? Because that might be your number one goal. Now your number one goal might be something different. And so we've got to come to consensus, but we're going to get to that part. I
just have a question.
Oh, go ahead, yes.
So what you're saying is with the MSIP Once we submit it and kind of get our final score, then we don't have to resubmit until next January.
Well, you won't be resubmitting it for, what is it, 3 years or 6
5
years? 5 years. No, well, the CSIP's every 5 years. I think it's every 3 years. Yeah, every 3 years. So the state isn't gonna be monitoring you once, but every 3 years,
Okay.
okay?
But it's something that we want to continue doing.
Yes,
regardless.
yes. I mean, that's the whole point of making every district in the state do this,
Okay.
is that they want to get a practice going. They want this to be common practice for every school board in the state.
So that score that we get, it will stay with us for the 3 years. And then will we see if we kind of went up the other evaluation? Is that what it is?
So they're still going to be monitoring your, academics throughout the year. But yes, your accreditation is based on a 3-year cycle.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so what's the superintendent's role in all of this? And I think you've had a wonderful example of that. Your superintendent's already on this, okay? But obviously providing data to demonstrate improvement in outcomes or not improvement in places that we need to work on, right? Yes, did you?
I was just putting my pen in.
Okay. Provide data and context. That's huge. That's difficult and that's huge. And that was kind of the complaint about MSIP 5 was you've got the data, but you don't have the context, okay? And so providing data and context. And a lot of times districts will do is they'll say, okay, we're going to look at comparable districts. And are we at least doing as good as those comparable districts? And really what we want to do is lead the pack. Make sure data is easy to understand. That's the hard part, okay? And that's probably why you have these committees, is to start building some knowledge base within the board on understanding the numbers, okay? And then the key part is connecting your board reports, program evaluations, and data to these relevant CSIP goals. And that's, Dr. Kendra also spoke about this, that these numbers are going to be used. If the numbers aren't where we want them to be, that's when we start looking at, is this an area that we need to better resource? Do we need to ask for what's going on there? It's the areas where we need to investigate, we need to focus on. Okay.
After going to St. Louis, listening to a couple other boards talk about their CSIP, one of the common, I guess, themes was, pretty much everything they vote on is somewhat tied to their CSIP. Would you agree with that, or would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, and some districts do a really good job of publicly tying it, okay? So like even on their agenda, and I know this is more work for administrative staff, and you guys need to decide if that's something that you really, really want, but one way to make sure that the board recognizes this is board level work is where, what does this have to do with the sea in China, okay? Well, it has to do with this part of our CSIP goals. This one has to do with this part of our CSIP goals. And it's good, I mean, that is a good practice in that it helps the board become fluent in, why are we doing this? Because particularly new boards, I think, the first couple of years you're like, I don't understand, why are we even doing this? And so it kind of ties that in, but it also helps the public better understand. What is it, the CSIP, and how is it used? Why is it important? Okay, so some districts do a really good job with, even on the agenda items, tying it in. But that's a decision that the board has to make on whether or not you think that would be useful to you. Now here's another board, and this comes from the research. So remember that we talked about how effective boards are focus on the mission, the goals, and the monitoring. But they also focus on student learning. And I don't know a school district out there that doesn't have a CSIP that's heavily embedded in student learning. Okay, everything we do has to have some kind of impact on our end result, which is a success-ready kiddo. So those research shows that those effective boards, if I were to grade you on your focus on student learning, okay, it would be based on this slide, okay? So does the administrative staff regularly provide the board information on student learning? And that's not to say, hey, you're not doing your job, administrative staff. It really is, hey, board, Because I have some boards that are like, yeah, whatever, I don't want to hear that, okay? And so the administrative staff quits bringing. Do you expect regular information, okay? Board members know what levels the district learning is at and where are the learning priorities, okay? So that's going to require digging down a little deeper on your district's performance. Board members are data focused. So I'm loving, you know, your staff's really set you up for success here, okay? Because they're getting you the data, all right? But are you gonna focus on it? Are you gonna absorb it? No excuses for poor performance and no blaming. Now what this means is we get a lot of folks, what they have found is that effective boards don't say things like, well, yeah, our kids aren't doing very well, but we have high poverty in this area, okay? There's no excuses. And I am a daughter of a teacher, okay? And I understand that many factors go into preparing a kiddo. And so I have many family and friends that are teachers too, and I understand that they have to deal with lots of things that are brought into the classroom that they can't really impact. But the eternal question I always push back to them is, have we done everything we can to impact the stuff we can impact? Okay? And if the answer is no, then I don't want to hear about the rest of it. Okay? We need to do everything we can, given the children that we have, to impact learning. And so that is really the mindset of a student-focused board.
So it's ownership of our part of it
Exactly.
and not sloughing it off.
Exactly. And it is so easy to slough it off. And I mean, I get it. Yes. It is a lot easier to educate kids that come, you know, highly educated parents, everybody's employed, higher socioeconomic. I mean, I assume that. That's not always the case, but definitely the numbers show that. But the question is, regardless of what's going on externally, are we doing our part, everything that we can, to push that needle? And if we aren't, then we still have work to do.
And
Okay.
then in that regard, I guess the continuous improvement could be a helpful aspect for us, because no matter where we start, as long as we have a plan to continue to improve, that's what the scorecard is largely measured on.
That's right, that's right. And that's where, quite honestly, the fun part about being an educator is, in my opinion, is, okay, we're having trouble with attendance. Let's dig into that issue. And all hands on deck. What can we do? Have we done everything? Have we brainstormed? Have we gotten creative? That's where the creativity comes from. That's why I love to go to conferences and hear about all the cool things that people are doing. And it always started with, we had a problem and we got a good team together. We took a bite out of the elephant and we chewed on it, okay? And that's how you become effective, okay? Student learning goals are sustained. Oh, the teachers have the biggest, because you keep moving the cheese, first I got to focus on this. Now I got to focus on that. So sustained improvement goals, okay? The methods might change depending on what we learn, new research, et cetera, but let's just keep it focused, all right? And board members take an interest in staff professional development and ensure it is directed towards goals. Okay? It's really easy to just say, yeah, go get yourself some professional development. But the expectation for the staff, and of course you guys aren't the ones deciding, you don't want to get in the weeds, but you do approve the professional development plan and you do pay for it. And so one of the board level questions is, does this align with our goals? Okay? And how does it align with our goals? So these are the student learning. So I want you to turn and talk, so at least 2, if not 3 of you together for a few minutes, and just think about these questions. Does this board focus on student learning? Like, where are you on that? How does the board demonstrate to stakeholders that student learning is a priority for the board? And then this one is more for you personally. Could you explain to a stakeholder what the district's performance goals are and where the district is at on those goals? Okay, so I want you to turn, like the three of you together, I want you guys to pair up and chat a little bit. I don't care if it's 2, 3, or 4, but I want a little bit of, rub your brain cells together a little on this.
Which one we got here?
So more focus on students.
We can track that.
Yes, I think that there'll be a bigger focus, obviously, with this CSIP thing. And
I would say
I'll be honest with you, since I've been here,
a lot.
I would say not enough. I would answer that as not enough because we were tied up in talking about facility, talking about some of the things. We forgot what our important focus was supposed to be. So this board has the opportunity to get back to that. Second, how does the board demonstrate the stakeholder with the student priority owner? I mean, I think they're gonna see that, because once we make this a standing item every single month, we're gonna beat the stakeholders to death. And even, just like we did with the board work session with students, with special education, we're gonna have board work sessions, these types of things. So it's all derived around student learning at the end of the day.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And then, explain the stakeholders what the district's performance goals are. Right now, you can't, but you're gonna be able to quick, because once we start having that standing thing, every single, you're either gonna like it or you're not. You might as well like it. Yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely.
Have a look at the info online, and the information's out there if you care about the workshop.
Yeah. It's coming. It's coming back, We'll get that. I think
What our goals are and what our differences are.
Oh, it's not possible. Yeah, process not good to have. Because you have
Solve so many other problems.
I do have a question.
But isn't the ones that teachers,
The question I would ask,
oh, is this one, bus drivers? That's why I said it's gotta be.
professional development aspect for
Yeah. The last bottom one, we're not the only source for it. I think staff brings a lot. Quite honestly, this committee's gonna be such a professional development for a couple of your board members, because they're gonna really dig down deep into that CSIP.
I was gonna say,
What is our,
So that's good media book studies.
think about it.
Oh, yeah. There's 1,000 ways to do it, but yeah. And we've got, Janet Tillett does a lot of those studies with school boards on a variety of topics as well. But yeah, a book study, even just your committee work, and then you bring in that for the rest of the board as a form of professional development. If everyone's engaged, but I like it. I've seen it.
We know that that's not your school.
My job as an attorney, I ran search during the day, and I go home, I'm like, I want those very princesses. Okay, let's come back and let me know. Twinkle toes.
Twinkle toes.
You gotta have better handwriting than I do. I gotta pick one to match your shirt. Why don't you stand up here and take some notes for me?
Oh, my God.
You gotta have better handwriting than I do.
No, I'm St. Joe School District, I can't spell it, you got to spell it.
That's all right, that's okay. I just want, this isn't going in the annals of, this isn't the Constitution. Okay?
You're used to being in front of phone calls. Betty, you're her dance partner.
You can write. But I just would like you guys to report out a little bit on the conversation that we had. okay? This isn't the Constitution, I just want to put something in writing here, okay? What do you think? Does this board focus on student learning? Or the better question is can we improve on that? What do you
I think
think?
we can improve a lot.
Okay, how so, how so?
Well, you know, it seems like we are occupied by trying to assist administration with approval of directions they want to go. And it's primarily more paying the teachers, fixing the schools, hiring people, making sure jobs are filled. That seems to be a dominant area that this board has to go through. And also COVID just dominated everything.
Oh yeah, everybody's having a reset, right? So, but part of it is tying a lot of what the superintendent's asking you to do back to, do we understand why? You know, and I get a lot of boards that are like, well, I just approved this big stack of thing, but I don't know why. You know, and so it's the why, right? So a little bit, so you think some improvement can be made on the folks?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think a lot of improvement can be made just because we have yet to discuss, you know, what area are we being more effective test score wise of low rates or really any academics since I've been on the board. So that's something that I would love to talk about. And I think something that Kenny said to me is, you know, it was something that was kind of taken away about a year ago. It'd be great to kind of have it back and have monthly meetings of where we're at academically and what are the areas that our kids are struggling more on. That way we can focus and see if we're using the resources to kind of help those departments the most.
Yeah, and one things are prohibiting that academic achievement as well, because we also deal with, you know, as every district does right now, behavioral issues in our classrooms. And that's a really dominant thing amongst teachers and parents, bus drivers, all the way across the board. And that's a distraction from that ability to be able to learn effectively. And so we've got to figure out how we navigate those waters to be able to use, you know, to correct that, to help improve the others, which of course attendance is another thing, you know, keeping them in the classroom to learn as well.
You know, the good thing about this is they're really solidifying my goals that I have prepared for them. This is working out just right.
That's the one.
We got number one and we got number two, right?
So we could improve.
Let's go home.
Our focus. So there's room for improvement on focus, okay?
And I would agree with both comments as well. I think we're presented with opportunities to enhance academics and student learning, but is it the primary focus of the board? That's an area I think we can improve on.
Okay, that's half the battle right there.
Which seems like a
Recognizing
simple-
there could be improvement, and the question is how now?
Yeah.
So how does the board demonstrate to stakeholders that student learning is a priority for the board? Anybody?
I think number two is going to be based off of number one. So I think first we have to make sure it is a focus. And then the second part is how to tell the story and demonstrate that and engage the community about it.
Yeah.
I think being updated with the information on a monthly basis would show them that we're at least concerned about where our kids are at. So
That's
having-
one way to demonstrate. That is one way of demonstrating is that it's on your board agenda. Okay, and now you have to work with the staff, so you don't scare your staff right out of the building, but, you know, because some data, like obviously when the MAP scores come in, that's gonna be huge, but, you know, effective boards, they're talking about it throughout the year. It's not just the MAP score. And we're going through the CSIP, that's gonna be some golden opportunities because there's a lot of student performance baked into that CSIP. And so that will. And so the question is, in the next few months, because you guys control your agenda, that's another one of those governing documents, is how is it best, what information do you want and need? And what's the best way to get that information and to digest it in a way that is, you know, not going to cause you to have to hire an extra person, but that you get the information, because the staff's already working on this, okay? You've got lots of experience in this, in your district on this, but what's an effective way for you guys to be informed and to understand it, you know? And that might take perhaps even a little, particularly with new board members, I have always encouraged staff to sit down and like help explain to me what these documents are, you know? So I'm sure you're going to get a little bit of that training with the document, Dr. Kevin.
I think board members visiting the schools in session is a good way to help you be informed of how the students are doing.
Well, going into a school lets you see what's happening in that school, but it doesn't tell you how the kids are performing in that school, okay? And there might be other good reasons for boards to take, and some of our boards take tours of the school and that visibility. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're focusing on student learning over, you know, facilities or just, you know, being visible to the staff,
Don't you think
okay?
you can tell if the children are focused on?
Well, but you have to be engaged. I mean, of course, they're going to be focused when the board member shows up.
Well,
You
you
sort of-
don't have to be conspicuous.
I think one of the ways that you said is kind of like measure it. So be presented where we're at right now with our kids and their academics, and then make a goal of where we want to be in 6 months and kind of.
Yes, yes. So that's kind of what the measures are. That's the CSIP. You know, are you guys monitoring performance goals? That is the governance job. Okay. And there's 1,000 different ways to look at it, which is why that document is overwhelming. And that's why we've got to kind of pick out a few little chunks, okay, to focus on. There's no way you can focus on all of that in 1 year. There's no way anybody can focus on that all in 1 year. Yes.
We had an academics committee that we're bringing back, and in that is a monthly committee.
Oh, that's good.
And when we bring it back, there's the opportunity to educate, and we've been talking about it for a while. I think we all are on the same page. We know we're going to bring it back, but in that,
You don't
there's an
want it.
opportunity for
You want it back?
a lot of education, you know, for board members to go through some of the items that Dr. Lau presented. I mean, that seems to me to be a good opportunity right there. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I would agree. I mean, I don't know what all's involved in an academics committee, but once again, raising the awareness and like, don't forget, this is the goal. This is why we have these contracts. This is why we're hiring this staff,
Right.
is to reach this goal.
Yeah.
You know, and I think one of the biggest things that's advantageous for the committee structure that we had in place before is it helps you vet. It helps you vet things that are coming to the board that are of a big expense, you know, whether that be from a technology standpoint. So just like when I talked to Robert last week for the finance committee, anything that's over $50,000 needs to be vetted by the finance committee. And then the board knows it's coming, so it's not like it's I got you, or you need to do this tonight.
Well, and you've
So
got
from
some
an
board
academic
members that
standpoint,
can intelligently speak on it,
right,
right?
and we have an active, you know, we're talking about attendance, we're talking about discipline, that's our opportunity to pass that information along at those types of meetings. So the timing is right for sure to get it back in place.
Good, good,
And I think
good.
we can make adjustments too, and not
Sure.
necessarily go back to how we used to do it, but now that we have the new M6 is how do we want to actually track it, and how do we want to inform the committee, or what information should we be presented at the committee with for academics?
Exactly, exactly. Always keeping in mind that you need the information to do your job, of course. Be mindful of the staff time that retrieving it. 'Cause occasionally I'll get school board members, and with the best intent, will ask for something and it'll take somebody off the grid for 2 weeks while they're putting it together. So you are entitled to, the board as a whole is entitled to any information that you want, being mindful of the fact that we need to keep the school going, so, as well, okay? All right, and could you as an individual, and I just want you to think of this in your head, okay? But can you explain, if I came up to you in the grocery store and said, why in the world would we spend $1 million on some system to display all of these numbers that nobody understands about? Could you explain to the stakeholder what the district's performance goals are? and where the district is at, okay? Because if you can't, then that's some personal work you have to do, okay? Not, I mean, it can, in the context of these committees, in the context of professional development, in the context of, hey, superintendent, what does this mean? You know, and I get it, you might not want to do it in the, when, you know, the whole world's watching, et cetera, but my superpower in law school was I was not afraid to look stupid, okay? So, you know, everyone's trying to outgun each other, and I did not have a problem saying, I do not know what you're talking about. And ultimately, that proved to be a successful model for me, okay? Because there were 50 people after class, I'm like, yeah, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about either, you know? But everyone's too scared to ask, okay? So it might be just pulling the superintendent aside and saying, I don't completely understand. It might be reading your packet before you get to the board meeting and making a call to the superintendent and saying, can I understand this a little bit better before I get in? Or afterwards, you know, just remember that's some personal work that you need to do, because an effective school board member knows this stuff. I'm not expecting you to say, oh yeah, 3.25 is the goal and we're at, you know, but I want you to be able to say, we've looked at it and we know that our math scores, our ELA scores in the elementary are good, our math scores are not as good, here's what we're doing about it. You know, that kind of thing. Are you with me? Okay. Twinkle toes failed me. All right.
Pull their shoes out.
Like I said, this is just a surface level to give you guys some work to do, okay? So the next, remember, this is our list of effective school boards. This is what an effective school board looks like. Delegate, and this is two sides of the coin. Delegate operational decisions to the superintendent. Monitor progress and maintain accountability is the flip side. Okay, because if we just delegate, then there's no need for a school board, right? You do it all, we'll see you next year. But the monitoring is part of it as well. Now, most of my boards really want to spend a lot of time on that first one, but we're probably going to spend a little bit more time on the second. Once again, I want to point out, if you look at your MSIP leadership standards, L6 lines right up with this research. The local board employs and evaluates the job performance of an appropriately certificated superintendent, chief executive officer to manage school system operations. And then A, right under that, is the local board delegates operational decisions to the superintendent, chief executive officer, and administrator. Okay? So it's not, I like it when things line up. So this one lines up too. Okay? So we've got to delegate. We've also got to monitor, and the main way that we monitor is through the superintendent evaluation process, and I do mean process. We don't want to be the guy in the glasses here, okay? That's what causes superintendents to go find a job somewhere else. All right, but on the flip side, we need to make sure that we are monitoring. So I have a few bullet points I'm not going to spend a lot of time on for strategies for delegation. This is hard because school board members are doers, okay? And so when somebody comes to you and says there's a problem, or you experience a problem, you want to fix it, you want to fix it, you want to fix it right now, okay? But these are strategies for delegation. Keeping in mind that you yourself have no individual authority, it's only the board as a whole. We have to refer questions, concerns, and complaints to the administrative staff. That's why you employ them, is to take care of the customer concerns, okay? That's why they exist. And if you don't give them the opportunity to fix it at a lower level, I mean, most stuff can be fixed at a lower level. Or if it's not a problem, we'll find out it's not a problem. If it is a problem, they can fix it. If we can't fix it immediately, then they should come to the board and say, okay, we've got a concern and here's our plan for addressing it. Okay, now that doesn't mean that when you send things to the superintendent that it's not going to come to the board again. There are processes in place for our constituents to come and communicate, but it's to the board as a whole, not to you as an individual savior, right? And so that is a really hard thing for doers to do. okay, is to reassure somebody, I hear what you're saying, I need you to go to the district staff first, okay? And in fact, I'll call the superintendent, tell him that you're gonna be calling him, all right? But you have to let the process work, okay? That's really hard for people to understand, but that's the way it goes down, okay? Periodically review board roles and collective commitments, which is kind of what you guys are doing right now, okay? The board and superintendent focus on district priorities and desired outcomes. My districts that micromanage aren't doing their governance work. They're not focusing on student achievement. They're not monitoring their CSIP. They're too busy looking over the superintendent's shoulder saying, you did it wrong, you did it wrong, you did it wrong, okay? And so one of the strategies is if you are looking at the top stuff, the rest of it will follow, okay? And once again, we're looking at data, not personal emotions or feelings. We want to see the numbers because, remember you're a governance board. You can't fix everything for one person, then it's broken for 99 other people. Okay, so you got to look at it overall. Ask your governance level questions, and I've heard a lot of good ones, monitoring your board meetings, and implement effective superintendent evaluation process. And that's what we're going to dig into a little bit here. These are some samples of governance questions because some of my boards just don't really know how to go about getting the information they need at a governance level. But really, I'm going to focus, because David wanted me to focus on the superintendent's evaluation. And I love this cartoon. How are you doing on your unspoken objectives? My what? I'm referring to the goals I have in my mind that I've never mentioned. How are those going? I'm totally nailing them, okay? All right? Nobody likes to be evaluated. Absolutely nobody. Particularly the best employees, that's what I found, is the ones that worry the most about being evaluated are the ones that are knocking it out of the park. But this is an important part of your job, not just because research says it's part of your job, not just because MSIP 6 says it's part of your job, it's actually part of your job in state statute as well. Your superintendent is your #1 employee, okay? And if you are not effectively monitoring and supervising your employee, that is your employee. That's why it's difficult to be a superintendent, okay? Because superintendents are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. But evaluations, and I've also known, nobody wants to evaluate either. I've got board members that would rather eat an elephant cold than actually go through the evaluation process. It's scary. We don't like to judge people. We don't like to be judged, and this feels very judgy. And there's some high stakes involved in it too. Okay, but if you're doing it right, it isn't scary. Okay, the problem is that a lot of my boards aren't doing it right. Okay, they have not vested in the process. This is not something MSBA came up with. This is actually a process that's based on research. DESE has implemented it for all educators, including our educator leaders, okay? And so that's why MSBA, and in fact your policy follows this as well, but let's talk about it a little bit. It's a circle, it is a process. It is not a one scary night in December or January, we sit down and we all have a scorecard and we say how we feel about Dr. Edgar based on, what time that we've had. We have ahead of time thought about how we are going to evaluate Dr. Edgar, okay? And so this is the way it rolls. The board and the superintendent identify goals and measures, okay? So remember, we're taking even a smaller bite out of that elephant, okay? A digestible chunk out of the elephant. These goals need to be aligned with your CSIP, okay? It sounds to me like we've already got some of you thinking about some goals, all right? It's not just the goal, but the measures. How is it going to be measured, okay? If a goal is not measurable, then we don't know it's getting done, all right? So how is it going to be measured is frequently a more difficult, almost harder than finding the goals, but it depends on the board. Some of my boards just They are so split. So just even defining the goals. The process of talking about this with your superintendent is priceless. It takes some time, but it is priceless because it will give you insight into what, and I mean, I don't think it's a secret what his goals might be, okay? But aligning the board, making sure the board's on board with that, that's priceless, okay? Talking about how it's going to be measured is priceless, okay? That is really important board work. Then you establish your baseline performance. Where are we now? And how do we know we are here now? Not gut instinct, not somebody told me in the grocery store, okay? Then the superintendent creates and shares a growth plan. So and that might involve his staff, okay? I'm gonna sit down, let me think about how I'm going to tackle this goal, okay? And then you have periodic updates and feedback. And by that, I mean, there's a designated place, maybe, and it's up to you to decide. I know your policy says at least twice before the summative evaluation, you have some time in closed session where the superintendent talks about progress towards the goal. What have been the challenges? What have been, sometimes we have to change the goal, okay? Pandemic was like a bomb that went off in the middle. I had school boards with these great goals and then suddenly, woo, everything went out the window. So these things can be modelable, okay? They need to be measurable and they need to be attainable, but they're not always attained. And that doesn't mean that the superintendent's done a bad job because the process is, these are the goals, we're gonna meet, the superintendent's keeping us informed on here's what I'm doing, here's what's working, here's what didn't work, here's what I need, etc. Then, yes, sir.
Would a quick update on a monthly basis, maybe in an executive session, be too much? Or do you think?
It depends on the goals. Probably too much on some goals because, I mean, in a month they might not have gotten, the superintendent might not have had a chance to do anything, depending on the goal that is selected, okay? And of course, you're dealing with a shortened timeline anyway because your superintendent's new. And so, he's going to get evaluated in 6 months or so. Some districts will stretch it out into the spring. But you've got to make decisions, and the point is you've got to make your contract decisions based on this overall. Okay, but your superintendent's new, and so and then we conduct our summative evaluation. That should not be a scary night. Hopefully, it's a night of celebration. Okay, like look at what we've done. Look at the movement that has been made. Okay, but there shouldn't be any. Or it could be, we didn't make it, but here's the reasons why. Should we add that and then reflect and plan? And then the process starts again. Do we keep that goal? Have we met that goal? Have we inched it a little bit higher? Okay? That's how effective progress is made. Maybe we've changed our mind. Pandemic, boom. Now we've got new goals. Things that we're worried about now that we weren't worried about 4 years ago. Okay? And so it's a process. But once again, it takes a commitment of the whole board to do, okay? And a commitment with the superintendent as well. It's an opportunity for you to discuss together. It's also an opportunity, quite honestly, for the superintendent to show off the work of his or her staff when this happens, So, but it shouldn't be scary. The problem is that a lot of boards don't really like creating goals, deciding on a goal, and so let's talk a little bit about this is actually based, I'm not going to go into detail, but this is the DESE regulation on educator evaluations, and so that's what this is all based on, and of course they created that based on research too. It's not like they sit in Jefferson City and come up with this stuff. So my staff calls it SMART goals. Okay, so it has to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay? You have to put a date on it. Okay? And this is, I think, relatively common practice in the private sector. We've got, people that work in the private sector have certain performance goals. I would argue, although I don't want to diminish the responsibility of people in the private sector. Producing a car is very different than producing a success-ready kid. So I hate to always make those similarities, but your goals that you make need to be specific, measurable, attainable. So, and it's going to be a little tiny bite of that elephant, not a big old chunk. Okay? Once again, SMART goals are collaboratively selected by the board and the superintendent, usually no later than the end of August. Okay, so if you guys haven't done this work, this is relevant work to be doing in the next 2 months. Limited to 2 or 3 research-based indicators, and my staff tell me really with a new superintendent, no more than 2. New superintendent, no more than 2. Okay? Consider superintendent learning and growth. So the superintendent, you might set a goal and the superintendent needs to really, it might be an area that they are not as well versed in. Okay? They might need to work just to get competent in the subject. And then it's district driven. It's got to be aligned with your CSIP. And it's reflective of your superintendent's entry plan too. Make sense? Evidence is, the biggest part is the evidence. And it can include artifacts, but, you know, our staff has worked quite a bit with districts to set measures. And so we've got some documents to help you. We've got examples of what other districts have done, okay? But the big thing is you guys have got to pick your goals. And then I wanted, in your packet is actually, you guys have a board policy on the evaluation of the superintendent, and this process is actually baked into your current board policy. Okay? So I put that in your packet just so that you could familiarize yourself with this. And I've got a couple, I know I need to keep moving on time so I can hit some of these other things. But I'm not going to read your policy to you, but it would be wise that you read the policy. I do want to point out that so the board will measure performance based on Missouri superintendent staff standards adopted by the state boards. So you have in your packet one pager, okay? And it says Missouri Superintendent Standards and Quality Indicators. Now, this is one part of a rather large document from the state, and our staff has boiled it down to one page so that school board members don't go running out the door screaming. Because the first step is pretty much, you know, these standards have been adopted by the state board. These are research-based standards of what a good superintendent does, what a good superintendent accomplishes, okay? And so your goals will fall under one of these quality indicators, okay? And if you notice, they are pretty broad. I don't think you're gonna have any problem with this. Sometimes I get boards that go off the ranch as far as their goals for their superintendent, and this is how we use to get them back on the ranch, okay? Because you can't evaluate your superintendent based on the football team success. We need to be focusing on these things. All right? So, you guys have the time frame. I'm not going to read this stuff to you. When it comes to the summative evaluation, all right? So that's tough. Being supervised by 7 people instead of 1 is a real pain in the tuchus. I think most superintendents would agree. It's hard to keep your boss happy. It's hard to keep 7 bosses happy. And you guys really have to speak with one voice. So the summative evaluation, this is how this is accomplished. Because you can't all say, well, I don't care what they say, I'm going to evaluate you on my own. Kind of thing. You guys have got to come to some consensus. Okay? So each board member provides their individual assessment on the superintendent's progress towards their quality indicator, and then you meet and reach consensus on the evaluation. Okay? So sometimes we have to talk a little and decide how far did we get. Now this shouldn't be too complicated if you've got really good measurable goals. Okay? And then the board meets with the superintendent to discuss, and then you plan your next goal for the next year. And that's how you move the needle, okay? Little tiny bites out of the elephant. Little tiny bites. Oh, look at that. Why don't you guys take a couple minutes and just chat in your groups? Do you feel that your board is doing well in delegating to the district staff? And then how well is your board monitoring the superintendent's performance? Okay, I know these things are hard to talk about, but we're talking processes, all right? Take a few minutes and chat a little bit about that.
What do you got, Gabe? 7 days under your belt?
7 days.
I already got my opinion.
I've already got mine completed.
You've got your opinion, you're ready for the summative, is that what you're saying? Okay, okay. I think it's more a matter of process, you know, like in the past, not this superintendent, but how are you? Have you guys engaged in this process? Were you even aware of this policy? What do we need to be doing right now as far as monitoring superintendent performance?
I think I tried harder.
Chat amongst yourselves, just for a few minutes.
Did it again. Like delegating, talking to the superintendent. In the beginning, after I was elected, I actually actively tried that. And then at the end, I stopped.
This is what we have on the board.
Yeah.
But you know, also too, one thing is if I set you up goals that are measurable, it's so much easier for you.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't know. My nephew's got here, they didn't do it right, they still have, I mean, it just, those are your guys' part, it's not the process where.
And after all, you know, when we did it, I just got to change the focus. The problem is that we did his whole we didn't really do them correctly, and then when they were not achieved,
I went to all.
we realized that, like, as we were doing the summation evaluation, you know, we realized that it wasn't fair.
That's one of my goals.
It's easier to monitor performance when you actually can see the performance occurring.
It's all changing.
Visit with the team.
I would rather,
First of July, sorry.
But yeah,
5 minutes, that's it. Let's not talk about it. Just give me a little, it's just around, it makes it easier on you. But I don't mind that.
yeah, it's a
Yes, I would rather.
I know,
No.
hey, you know, that evaluation, remember, he seems to last until like 11 o'clock, and then he has to come back the next day. I mean, at the end of that, I didn't care what the hell he said.
And if we talked about it every month,
Yeah, this is,
it's already in the back of your mind.
yeah, that's what I was also thinking too. Just give us that. I have PhD.
I wonder if girls, you know, I don't get it, usually have it here and be
I'm
like,
the one looking at all these liquids.
What do you think about us taking a 5-minute break? Looks
That's
like
good.
few
Good
people
plan.
didn't use the restroom.
Looks like it's a good time, it's a good time.
Hey, we'll take 5 minutes. You guys want to use the restroom for 5 minutes?
That's why.
Well, I don't know if you write large or small, we can use another sheet if you want to, but I just put delegating and monitoring. Just to get a little bit better, just to give you guys an opportunity to chat if there's anything, if this is an area that we need to work on, or do we think we're doing better at, or what do you think? We'll start over here. So what do y'all think? You know, how well do you think you're delegating to the district staff?
Well, I think we delegate everything.
So you think you're doing a decent job of delegating? I mean, certainly, school boards can't operate without the staff, obviously. But the question is, do you feel like you're doing a good job of letting them take problems and try and fix them, and then the board, and the whole process just kind of winnows out. Theoretically, we get a lot of stuff taken care of at the bottom level, and the board just deals with the really sticky wickets.
You know,
You think we're doing a
we
decent
haven't-
job?
We haven't been good at that at all, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
We're so new, everything's new. I mean,
Well, so
7 days and.
we're just finding a lot of ground level problems making their way to us first. And
Okay.
that was one of the questions that we've all talked about at different times is the proper chain of command and the best ways to delegate those things down through. I think that's even something you're going to address today. So certainly we could be better at it. I mean, we certainly try to, but I think learning who handles exactly what and making sure that, you know, we send it up the proper channel so that we can also have the proper accountability looking backwards as well is something we could be better at.
Okay.
I
So,
think-
See, yeah, but I think we do all right. I do think always there's a room for improvement, but allowing the staff members to do their job, not hang over them and bring to us their finished product, and whether we like it or not. But I feel like we still do okay with that.
Yeah,
We don't,
We don't direct them on how to do
Yeah.
their
Oh,
job.
no, not like that at all.
That's what I meant.
that's what we were looking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
Yeah,
under the
I mean,
impression
that's
you
what-
spent like, you know, from delegating down, I just feel like a lot of times we don't, things don't make its way
So it's,
back down.
what Bill and I were talking about was that situation where the teacher had emailed you guys first
Yes.
and then had all the complaints. I was just telling him I'm meeting with her 2:15 on Monday, and I'll go through it just kind of specifically. But the problem is, a lot of it needs to go back to even her building principal. She
Yes.
needs to start with her building principal and make that route. She went straight to you guys, and how do you answer those questions? You know, that's not your job.
So-
That's what we.
And that's where I was
That's-
at, my mind went there as far as redelegating that back down to where it should have been instead of at our level.
I guess you can look at it from a couple of different viewpoints, from Phil's viewpoint, and then from the viewpoint of how well do we allow people who are hired to do a job to do a job. Was that what you?
well, that's part of it. I mean, that's the whole point of delegation, is you hire people who have expertise in a job, let them do their job. But there's the alternative, I mean, there's always if the issue is still not solved, okay, then it becomes a board issue. But by the time it gets to the board, we've got the facts, we've had it investigated, you know, the issue has been narrowed down to, so that you guys have a digestible chunk to deal with, okay? And that's why we don't do it. The tough thing is community, teachers, parents, students, taxpayers, everybody. Well, I'm gonna go straight to the top. And I thank you for bringing it to my attention, but we have to let the staff deal with it first. And if it's still a problem after the staff has, then bring it to the board, okay? And that's important for a number of reasons. One, I mean, you hired these folks, why not use them? But two, you can settle a lot of things at a lower level. And some of it's just flat out misunderstandings. You could spend a lot of more time on something that's just flat out a misunderstanding that can be solved at a lower level. So the tough thing for board members is making sure that the public knows it's not that I don't care, and it's not that I don't listen to you, and it's not that I don't want to deal with this. But we have a process where it can get resolved quicker. And then if it's still a problem, we also have a process where it can get to the board. And by that time, we'll have all the facts, everyone has, and then we can really do our board level work on that issue.
Well, I think that's what we were thinking, staff member, where that is a different kind of issue, but not starting where it needs to start, goes right to the top.
Yeah, I'd say
If
that's
somebody
just-
sends me an email, I might say, hey, Gabe, I got an email about this. And Gabe he'll probably say, well, I've already heard about that from.
We're on it, and we're
Yeah, we're
on
on
it,
it.
yes. And then you can politely say, thank you, I've contacted the superintendent, and they're aware of this, and they're looking into it.
Are we like a B plus then? Because I need something right.
That's it.
I wish we had one of those, remember the old
No, it's fine,
cartoons?
just stand
like,
there.
I'm a Bill on Capitol Hill and the whole nine yards. That's what we need.
Here's a key point. This is a constant communication issue. okay? There isn't a district out there that does it perfectly, okay? And so I think you can put always room for improvement, keeping the communication lines open. The important thing is that you guys have articulated, you thought about it, you articulated it, and now the question is the knowing and doing gap, right? So now that we know it, what can we say if something comes up, you know, and what should we do? Yes.
So from Phil's perspective, which I think I know what his perspective was, you know, when you have someone who brings you an issue, and you know, obviously there's a chain of command, and you want to inform the person of the chain of command. How do you, I guess, adequately communicate without being, you know, dismissive? You know, and at the same time, there seems to be some sort of balance there where you want to be helpful, but then there's an overreach that you don't want to commit.
Well, I wish I took it out because you wanted to focus on some other stuff, but there is some great role-playing opportunities available in this situation. And I think the important thing is, of course, it depends on the person, right? And your relationship with the person, et cetera. Obviously, you're an elected official and you want to be responsive. And so always thank them for bringing something to their attention. Ask them, have you brought this to the attention of the teacher, the principal, and the superintendent, assistant superintendents are in the food chain too. And if they aren't, ask them to send it back. Now, I know that there will be folks that say, I will be retaliated against, they will, and the response has to be, we've got policies, we've got very strict rules against retaliation, okay? But I'm an individual. I have zero power, zero, okay? I'm one of 7. I can't make anybody do anything in the district, okay? All I can do is bring it to their attention, and then when the process works, it comes before the board. I am one of 7, okay? So I cannot fix your problem myself. I can bring it to the attention of the appropriate people. Who would you like to speak to? And I will make a phone call, you know, okay, you've talked to the teacher, you've talked to the principal, I'll make the phone call to the superintendent and let the superintendent know you're coming.
And that's one of those things a little off, and you're right on what I was saying, that, you know, we have to almost re-educate our general public that process, you know, because I've spoke with teachers many times and they really don't understand the process and they're part of the process, you know, so I think that certainly, when we start talking about goals for our district, you know, that's certainly one of the ones we need to keep in mind, is that it's hard to implement those processes when no one really knows what they are. They think that they can go right to the top. And
the other thing is that it's all sounding good until it deals with something you really care about, and then all of a sudden, delegation be damned, you know? and so it's hard on many levels, okay? And quite honestly, we are a can-do country, right? So I'm going straight to the top.
I tell people, imagine you're like at Starbucks and you messed up on a drink or whatever. Do you call Starbucks board of directors about your drink? No, you go to the store at the manager. And then people are like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
There you go, what a great example. It is a great
A
example.
lot of times these folks have already got the answer, and it wasn't the answer they wanted, so they're trying another avenue.
And there is that, and that is, I mean, that is why there is a process to come before the board, and that is part of it too, is that we can't necessarily make everybody happy all the time, but what we can do is have a process to make sure that everyone's been listened to, and that it makes sure that mistakes aren't being made. Misunderstandings, mistakes, that's why the staff needs to have the first bite of that apple.
Yeah, I thought we were asked to allow the president of the school board to do the responding to those things.
I think so.
That instead of us individually. You at this particular time, because that's your position.
Oh, yeah, there was one incident, yeah, that I did, yeah.
So it doesn't get 6 or 7 different answers,
Yeah, you're
but
the
to allow
spokesman.
you, because you're the spokesman for the board, to do the responding to those things.
There are districts that have those protocols in place. particularly, are you one where there's something on the webpage where people can email and then all of you get the emails? A lot of districts put in those protocols for the very fact that we don't want 7 different answers, and then we made one problem worse.
And in this particular instance, this teacher knew that it was supposed to come from you because she even stated it. But
I didn't know that it was supposed to come from you.
Well, but she even stated it in her letter.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm just saying that, I didn't realize that was a policy.
Well,
I
it
don't
was
think
just
it's a policy, it was
suggested.
just
It's
a
not a
practice.
policy.
It was a practice
Okay.
of the previous board,
It was just
before
a
you guys.
practice,
Yeah.
and that's what was suggested to us. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you
Honestly,
guys
it's
can
not
have
a
a
bad
further
practice.
conversation
No,
on
it's
how
not.
And then that way,
to
that way it's
respond. Let's
time.
put how to respond to correspondence down on the
So
list.
and then sometimes,
Okay.
there's been a couple of instances where, someone has sent an email to the board, and everyone will be in there, but our trustee, our secretary won't be included, or the superintendent won't be included, or the person who could really answer the question or should be answering that question is not even in the email.
Yeah.
So sometimes we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot if we get an email and we just shoot back.
And that's part of training
so-
too. It's not that we don't care.
Yeah.
And it's not, you might have the same feeling about the subject or not. The important thing is that it gets to the right people, that everyone in the board understands it needs to be, let the staff try and handle it first. And if it doesn't work, there's still a process to get it before the board. But by that time, we've cleared up, the misunderstandings and the mistakes and the oopsies and the things that, so that you guys your time is dealt with appropriately.
And I don't know that it was a policy either. I think it was just previous practice, which
That's okay.
in many cases makes sense that, they're not getting 7 different messages, or maybe the person that should be responding to the email is not even included on the email. So
Exactly,
just make sure it
exactly.
gets to the right place.
And and quite honestly, that's how the answer gets handled quicker, than 7 people going and trying to find it out.
That was just an instance where no one responded to her, so.
Okay, so the next one, superintendent monitoring, where are we on that? I know we've got a new superintendent, so it's not just this superintendent, but for those of you that have been on the board for a year or more, how have we been doing as far as the monitoring process? And is there room for improvement there?
I don't think we've been monitoring that much, really. We had goals for the superintendent, and then we did have a meeting, and we discussed if we felt like he'd satisfied those goals, but that was before any of the newest members have come on. That was probably in March or so when we had that evaluation.
And when did you set those goals?
We set those goals the previous fall, I think.
Okay.
September.
And did you have were they measurable?
Well, I don't know, they were difficult to measure, I think.
I think that we get like a D- on that.
Yeah, the way it was presented to us before, the goals we came up with were really more about how image,
Okay.
school district image were goals we gave, and his image to the public, improving that. And
Well, public relations can be a goal,
That was
but
primarily-
how you prove your image has improved is you need to structure that a little bit more, because you can have people with a great image, but they aren't very successful.
And before that, we'd given him a goal to come up with a plan for a reorganization or improving the schools. And he did come up with a plan, and we did evaluate that.
Okay, well, quite honestly, you're further along than many of the boards that I've worked with, because many of them don't have goals, and they just show up at that scary meeting.
But I like these goals you suggested with the student improvement. I think that's a great goal for the superintendent. And then that'll improve our image automatically.
Well, and so it sounds to me like you guys have gotten the goal oriented, but maybe we need to make sure that they're SMART goals, okay? That they're measurable, they're obtainable, and that we don't just give them a goal and then, that we depending on what goals you pick, that you touch base within. So it's not scary. Yes.
We don't have any new goals established. I know we had a board retreat about this time last year. We also talked about some goals, but in terms of monitoring, I don't think we did much monitoring on a monthly or quarterly basis.
No, and then another question, he was given goals that other people completed. Does that count as his win, or?
Sure. I mean, he is, it's up to him. I mean, that's the whole thing about you have one employee, and then he has his leadership team and they have their folks underneath them. But any goal that you give him is going to be pretty weighty, and he's not going to be able to accomplish it on his own. Particularly talking about student achievement. I mean, that goes all the way down to the classroom. Okay, so, but yes. So it is his responsibility to make sure that his team and the school district is moving towards that goal. Okay. Now, his job is to manage that process and to report back to you and to let you know what resources they need or what hiccups have occurred. And that's part of the conversation. That's why that's part of the evaluation, is he is demonstrating to you his leadership skills, his ability to manage people, his ability to manage resources, and the ability to get things done. And so that is part and parcel of it. But good question. Okay, so you guys have taken some steps in that direction, but we could do better in that monitoring part. Okay, good. Okay, Latoya. I keep calling you Tanya. Latanya.
Yes, I get that, like, so many
I'm
times.
sorry.
You're
I'm
good.
sorry. My last name's Goldammer, and I answer to anything that begins with a G. Okay, so we are back to. So I told David we couldn't possibly digest all of this in one, 2-hour session, but here we are back.
31.
This one is going to be, I wanted to make sure for sure we got to this one, because this is going to become very relevant in this next year in particular. So implement reliable and representative two-way communication with all stakeholders. So remember, I told you there's a lot packed in that. Okay, reliable. All right, so not just one or two people telling you, but communication that truly reflects the community. Okay, representative. Once again, reliable and representative go together. Okay, two-way, not just information out, not just people coming to a board member and complaining, but actual communication, and with all stakeholders, and let's emphasize the all. Okay, and I love the cartoon. Before this goes too far, you really need some stakeholder input. Okay, but the past year in particular, and it's not just your district, it's all school boards in the state, there have been it's part pandemic, part politics, part emotion, okay? But there's been a lot of folks showing up at school board member meetings. Some of them have never been to a school board meeting. I want to emphasize that MSIP 6 again, L8, the school system provides for two-way, reliable, and representative communication with all stakeholders, so that's on your sheet. That's what you're supposed to be doing. There is, if you're interested in digging in a little bit, there is a great publication, and I'm happy to email it to you, but I just didn't want to kill more trees, is Connecting with the Community, and it's actually a publication that's put out by the Illinois School Boards Association that synthesized some research on effective community engagement, and I would recommend that as a reading, just because it does raise, it explains to you in great depth what is community engagement, and I don't think the average person, I don't think I knew until I started doing this work what true community engagement is, okay? So a lot of folks, when they think about community engagement, they think of public comment time at your board meeting. Or they think about the newsletters that you send out, and all of those are important parts of the process. But Community engagement is not an idea that is planted one night and then springs into full bloom, miraculously providing information to help make decisions. It must be well planned and nurtured over an extended period of time as a process rather than a single event. And so are you seeing a theme here? So like the evaluation of your superintendent is a process, not an event. The CSIP implementation, it's a process, it's not an event. All of this is a process that we need to get good habits going as far as school districts and school boards. Now, we need to separate public relations from engagement, okay? And that is the difference, not to diminish public relations. Public relations is essential, particularly in a district your size. But I'm finding that all of my school districts need to have an employee with some part of their job designated to public relations, okay? And the definition of public relations is providing information on the organization to the public so that people will regard that person or organization in a favorable way, okay? That's ideally, but in order to get that way, particularly for a public governmental body, it's got to be accurate, truthful, transparent information, okay? And the professional maintenance of a favorable public image by a company or organization. That's true public relations. School districts don't do completely that. Ours are much more public information is in that, because obviously if your public doesn't trust a word that you say, there's nothing that your public relations department can put out there that can explain to the public the good things that you are doing. Okay, and so I would argue that public relations in a public entity isn't just spin. It's trust. It's building trust. Okay, and any good PR person will know when they call, you answer the phone calls, and you try and build that relationship with the media and with the public, because even if you don't know the answer, just telling them I don't know the answer, I will follow up is crucially important. Okay. Public engagement is different, okay? Public engagement is ongoing and systematic process by which school boards actively involve diverse citizens in dialogue, deliberation, and collaborative thinking around common interests, okay? Public engagement is a lot of work, okay? And it's a lot of listening as much as talking, and trying to understand where folks are coming from. And a huge part of it is rounding up people that are willing to talk to you. One of the big questions that you always have to ask is who needs to be in this room? Who is not here that should be here? What voice are we not hearing? And it is really easy for us to want to fill the room full of yes folks, people that love the school district, but not reach out to the folks that are incredibly unhappy with the school district, and they too have a voice, okay? That's true community engagement, is engaging all of the community, and that's hard, okay? People that you don't agree with, people that don't agree with you, okay? I think that we've emphasized the process part, but bullet 2 is important. Because community engagement is in connecting with citizens as owners, not as customers. And the literature on this really talks about, particularly in relation to school boards, the customer complaints, concerns, input, that needs to go to your district staff. I'm not happy with my kid, my job, those are, when we talk about our customers, the parent complaints and concerns, that's another reason why we send it to the district staff. Not that we don't care about it, and not that, but they are in the customer service business. They deal with the customers every day. They are the Starbucks baristas, and they are the store managers, okay? And they need to process that first. But when we're talking about community engagement, we are talking about a process where our owners, the owners of this school district, are given an opportunity to weigh in, okay? And not just an opportunity, but an open invitation of an input and engagement, okay? Now, on the flip side, we want to have that. We're not asking the community to vote for you, okay? You still have a representative job to do as a school board. I know that some weighty issues, districts are like, let's just put it on the ballot. I've had districts say that, this is a really hard decision, can I just put it on the ballot and let the public decide? And it's like, no, that's giving away your job, okay? Because not everybody in the public can dig in and see all of the angles like you guys have. But recognizing that your community are your owners and creating a process where they have ownership interest in the district, okay? Another key point, different voices and viewpoints, even the ones that you don't want to hear, even the ones that you've heard too many times and you're tired of hearing, that is a viewpoint, okay? And giving those viewpoints an opportunity to come forward as well as all of the others, okay? Building common ground, not just consensus. And what that means is building the community's understanding of a weighty issue. Okay, so in the end, we don't need to agree. Some of these things will never 100% agree, but does everyone understand what the problem is? Okay, does everyone have the facts in front of them? And then, so it's creating knowledge, just information. So there is an educational component to it, but it's not you just talking to the community. It's a true engagement. It's hard to do. Okay, this is also difficult work, and only the most effective boards do it. And guess what? So Senate Bill 681 was signed by the governor last week, and in it is a directive that before July 1, 2023, each district has to adopt a community engagement policy that provides district residents methods of communicating with the school board. Okay? So whether you want to or not, this is going to be probably put in your lap. Of course, MSBA will have a sample policy, but the statute is specific that the policy can only be adopted after receiving public input. Yes, sir.
I think we do have at every meeting, we have an opportunity for anybody at the meeting to speak.
But once again, is that engagement? Is that reliable two-way communication? Okay, and so that is a piece of it, and indeed this policy, the law does require that any resident, so part of this policy is going to be that any resident of the district can get an item put on the agenda. You create a process where it's got to go through the superintendent first, and you can put some guardrails on it as far as time, and if the issues come up before, 3 months at least to, so the statute does allow for that. But the theory is it's more than just that. Like, that is not the only way. In fact, some would argue that's not actually engagement. Because a lot of times, with public comment, when it's not on the agenda, you just listen. When it is on the agenda, sometimes you still just listen. And listening is good. I don't want to devalue the listening. Listening is important. But there's a whole bunch of people in this world that would never in a million years come to stand at a podium in your board meeting and tell you how they really think. They've done lots of studies as far as people's likelihood to complain as opposed to praise, and certainly they're not going to take a night out to come tell you you're doing things great. And so it's hard for boards to understand how are we doing when 10 people show up at a board meeting and tell you that everything's gone to heck. Has everything gone to heck? And so this is part of your kind of monitoring the pulse of your community.
And then I think it's kind of awkward, our way of doing it, because they come and they speak and we're not allowed in order to talk back or anything or respond. We just can kind of listen. And I know that there's been lots of times it's been hard to just shut up, and not respond to what they say. I mean, it's not like
that is an
it's
issue
waiting.
too. So, and part of the reason you're not responding is a lot of times these things aren't on the agenda, and so you worry about the sunshine law.
And they never
get
are.
into a big discussion.
Right.
On the agenda, but what this law is going to require is a process for a resident to be able to get on the agenda, okay? So you could have a conversation.
And we're able to get like information like about their topic and everything prior to the board meeting then?
Yes. So
Oh,
that's the
okay.
difference. So, and districts have different ways. Some of them, it's just open mic time. Literally, like, you come in, you sign up, you get 3 minutes. As long as it's vaguely related to the school, you get to talk. And that's a sunshine law issue, which I don't think most people realize is that, like, you know, I can't have a full conversation. And quite honestly, I don't have all the information I need. You know, like, you're telling me that the principal told you this. Is that true? Did somebody talk to the principal? Have we seen? And there's always 2, 3, 12 other sides of the story. And so it's not a good process anyway. Okay, because good decisions are made with good facts. What this new law is going to require is what a lot of districts already have, which is a process where folks can go through the chain of command, but ultimately ask to be on the board's agenda. Okay, and by that time, you will have had the superintendent's had the opportunity to speak to the relevant people, and we can put it on the agenda and have a conversation. And if it's a closed session issue, that's the other tough thing, is people sometimes get angry at staff and want to come and have this like in front of everybody, and that's not fair to that staff person. And so you will be able to put it in closed session if it needs to be in closed session, you know. But that, I just want to point out, is a tiny piece of what public engagement is. And in your packet, there is actually a sheet that goes over, it's a kind of a summarizing of different ways of public engagement. Not like this is an exclusive list, all right? But true public engagement is deeper. It's on the right hand, it's the very last part on the right hand side. So there's some community engagement strategies. And these aren't exclusive. This isn't the end all and be all. This isn't everything. This is something for you to think about as you plan, because everybody's going to ultimately have to plan on this. Okay? But part of public engagement is raising consciousness. So first you got to identify an issue, working through the issue, and then identifying alternatives. Okay? And that's really, it's good work. It's effective work. Okay? Our staff is always like, you got to put the why before the how. I heard you guys using that language too. Okay, why are we doing this? We don't just have meetings to have meetings. You know, shoot me now. In order for it to be meaningful. Okay, why are we engaging in the process? What do we hope to learn, to decide, to accomplish? Are we doing this just for show? Then forget it. Don't do it if it's just for show. But quite honestly, one question could be engagement about community engagement. You know, how do we raise, because I think that would be perfect subject for, let me go to 4, raising consciousness of some of this stuff. Y'all are volunteers. Do you know how many legislators don't know school board members are volunteers? You know, we're constantly telling them in Jefferson City, you want school board members to do what? Do you understand they are volunteers? They don't get paid for this. Okay? Out of the goodness of their hearts, they've put themselves out there. And you're expecting them to do what? So raising consciousness, working through the issue. What are the issues? What is the problem? Is there a problem? Is there just a miscommunication? Okay, and then identifying alternatives. So why are we engaging in the process? Is our level of commitment in using public input to make a decision or create a practice? And we're going to talk a second here about your public. Are we just providing information out to the public? Are we hoping to consider public input? Do we really want public input? Don't ask for it if you're not going to listen. Are we hoping that they will influence our decision or practice? Or are we going to actually incorporate their recommendations? Okay, so those are 4 levels. 4 levels. So let's talk about that quickly, because I don't have much time on this one. Information. Okay, so I think most districts do a pretty good job of this. Okay, but that's pretty surface level. community engagement. So purpose is communicating factual information regarding the issue, decision, practice. I have a feeling the Public Relations Department does a good job with that. Now the district, the board's commitment is that it's going to be clear, accurate, and timely. Clear, accurate, and timely. And I have a feeling most districts do a decent job with that. If you want them, if you just want to consult, you want to obtain feedback on the information or the alternatives. You may or may not take it, but you're going to consult them. So obviously the commitment is to actively listen, address concerns and opinions, share how the public input was considered. You have to share back with the public. Why was this a valuable use of your time? Next one is a higher level of involving, directly work with the public throughout the process of reaching a decision and creating a practice. Okay, so a little bit level. Once again, we're still listening, we're still addressing concerns and opinions, but we're going to share how the public input influenced the decision. Like we went in thinking this, but it turned out we went another direction based on the input that we received. Now that only works if we got all of the right people in the room. Is everybody in the room that needs to be in the room? And then collaboration is really, we don't even come in. We're gonna create this together. We're gonna create this together. Yes, sir.
You know, you're aware, St. Joe, we went through this process since August, you know, engaging with the public about what the future of our schools should be in different areas, academically, facility-wise, what the people wanted. And, you know, I think we're still assembling our information from those meetings.
Do you feel that it was, what level of engagement do you think that was at? So was it information? Was it under inform?
Well, it was, I don't know that we actually informed. We did inform them on where we are now, and we asked for input from them on how to improve things. And,
Okay, did you consult them? Did you consult, you feel like you're at the consult level?
Well, we gave opportunity for them to comment on everything, and we had group sessions at the meetings, at tables of people, and they would make comments on different things, you know, and turn those comments in. And like I say, we're still assembling the information we got.
Okay, so you're not done.
No, we're not done yet. No.
So we're definitely at least
We
at
don't know
consult
what
level.
we're gonna do yet, yeah, but we do have a lot of information that's being assembled for us to study and hopefully collaborate with.
Well, and then the question is, if at the end of this, are you going to be able to articulate how it was considered? Okay, did we just do table stuff and we collected the papers, but nobody looked at it after that? Did we look at it? Did we?
Well, my fear is it's not a large enough sample of the population to give us a true feeling of the community.
Well, and then that might be an opportunity for you to think about who wasn't there. Okay? Now, you can't force people to come. On the flip side, a personal invitation does a lot.
I don't know that they even assessed the reason that people were there. You know, they just counted heads more than anything.
Well, and that's, I mean, at least you had heads, okay? I mean, I've got some districts that couldn't gather, but the question is do you think that you know, what level of community engagement are we at? Is it possible and is it proper for us to go deeper?
I think so, because I also went to the meetings and it was more so teachers and staff. And it wasn't very many parents.
I didn't feel like we got a real good representation from the community.
So we did get a lot of engagement, but it was more so like an in-house engagement and not really the people who are having the concerns that we hear about.
And there were no minorities.
Yes.
And so part of the question is everybody have a voice? Has everybody, do we have everybody we need to in the room? And of course, those kinds of big things aren't one and done, but is there an additional level we need to go to for community engagement?
We did that 7 days ago when he started. We really had started.
Good, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
It was, these things were open. to
They
the
were
entire
open.
board.
Yeah, it's
The
gonna cost
question
them an extra
is,
beer.
They
What
were
around
open.
It's gonna cost them a beer.
yeah,
You cannot force them.
you can't force people to come, but on the flip side, there's more than one way to get people engaged. Okay, so just putting out, it's open to the public, come, we'll feed you a sandwich isn't necessarily going to get you, particularly if you're, somebody working 3 jobs, if you're, somebody who quite honestly has not, another issue that I'm working through, which, my mom was a teacher, so I know I was never scared to go to school, excited to go to school. School was a happy place. There's a good percentage of the population that school was horrible for them. They'd rather stick needles in their fingers than come to school voluntarily, okay? And yet those are probably, their input is probably very, very valuable if we could just figure out how,
Yeah.
okay?
So much apathy.
Yes, and why is that? Why? So I have more than gone past my time at this point in time. Yes, sir.
Okay, my question will be brief. I know with, campaigning for the levy, we've had to go and knock on a lot of doors and go to a lot of organizations. So as far as community engagement is concerned, I guess, as opposed to just, opening up the doors and telling people to come to us, could it be considered going that extra mile and finding other organizations to go into and present some facts and some endeavors of the school district to try to get that process rolling, I guess, more on a micro level? Just several different organizations.
That is one way of community engagement, is going out and saying, I have an issue. And so going to different organizations. I mean, that's the big overall question with public engagement is who haven't we heard from?
Well, we'll probably go to over, maybe 30 organizations or so. And, but that's with a specific intent, If we were able to do that, maybe not over the course of 30 days, but maybe we take 6 months and try to get to know different organizations and, I guess, organizations that normally would not have come to a school board meeting or a Vision Forward meeting. Could that be a more proactive approach?
Yeah, it's moving up the chain. But the real question is, are you just consulting them? Are you informing them? Are you consulting them? Or is it going deeper? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay? And then it's not just, and this is the problem from a lot of school districts, it takes work. I mean, let's be honest, it takes work. It takes commitment, it takes work, it takes time. It takes your time, it takes your staff's time. You don't want to waste people's time, okay? And we don't do tap dances just to do tap dances. And but is it an ongoing thing, or do we just do this when we want a bond or levy issue passed?
Yeah.
Is it an ongoing thing, or do we just do it when, we want something from the community, as opposed to, I'm checking in with my owners, So once again, this is hard, but it's worth doing. And I think a lot of stories throughout my professional life of districts that stopped and tried to do more intentional. I don't know of very many districts that do the full public engagement. I have some districts that have waited much further than others, okay? But I think it does result, it does get you results, but it has to be intentional and continuous, right?
I think if we engage with the PTAs at all the schools, that covers
Yes.
a large portion.
It's more
of people
effective.
that really are interested in what
Yes,
we're
exactly.
Well, that's definitely engaging with your customers, but is that engaging with your owners? Okay? And who all is not in the PTA? The mom that's working 3 jobs isn't in that PTA meeting. And the seniors that don't have any kids, but still pay taxes aren't in that PTA meeting either.
Well,
Okay?
the senior, people that pay taxes are very important for us
Yes.
to engage with.
And so the continuous question is, who have we not spoken to? Who is not in the room? And once
Everybody
again,
paying taxes.
people in the PTA tend to be very supportive of the schools. You know, who are the people that aren't supportive of the schools? We need to hear from them too.
And I think we've started that, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. But needless to say, I think all school boards are going to be chewing on this elephant for the next year. So I have the real, I don't want to go through. The last one was really the question, once again, about ongoing professional learning. That's actually L1 in your MSIP 6. And of course, we've got what's required by law. We've got your board policy. You guys have a board policy on professional development and training. That's policy BHA. And I encourage you to take a look at it. But the real question I want to leave you guys with, and if I had, you know, I don't want to crowd out. I believe I'm ending on time and I'm already late. These are the questions that your board needs to ask yourself. Okay? What does the board need to be effective? You know, now you've got your roadmap. And you guys have had really good conversation. I appreciate that on just sort of analyzing. And then what do you as a board member need? You know, because everyone comes at it different angles and stuff. I would need like a sock puppet to help explain the budget to me. But I would go find that sock puppet if I needed it. With that, how can I help you all?
Well, speaking of professional development, I was in St. Louis and heard Todd Whitaker speak, and Asar Garcia was there also. I haven't read the book, but I thought it would be a great book for the board to start. The title is The School Board Members Guidebook, Becoming a Difference Maker for Your District. And we got one for every board member. Maybe we could start a book club or read it together or something. But just a thought, and got one for each.
Becomes bearing gifts. So with that, I'm just going to leave. You've got my number in the folder. And yes, sir. Twinkle toes, yes.
Yes, before you leave, I had a whole bunch of questions, but I'm not going to bore everybody with it. I'm just going to turn a couple of them into statements.
You got the phone number, you can call them.
Yeah, I do. I'm really glad for that, Susan. I mean, when I'm in Columbia, I'm always meeting the dance partner.
There we go. Come on by the office. I'll get you
Every So anyhow, this thing they've been alluding to, this vision backwards, creative staff jobs, is DOA, thank God. But anyhow, what I was wondering about, you know, several times it's been mentioned, I do not think that a non-unanimous vote is a bad thing. I actually think a non-unanimous vote is healthy, it's transparent, and when people have a chance to hear what the opposition was, it gives the other side that were for it to hear what the opposition was about. So I think not being unanimous is a good thing. It makes us stronger. And of course, I'll be the first one to be number, 1/6. So,
Just as long as you're not dissenting just to dissent, you know? But yes, I agree with you that we don't need a 7-0 vote just to be 7-0.
Any more comments?
yes, there is. And we talked about something a while back about the continued testing. I made the front page and sold plenty of papers for the Bradley Bugle last year because they were trying to discontinue the testing. And I came out and said, no, we should continue the testing. I'd rather know where we are, even if it's bad. So anyhow, I think I won the day that in the press. And then
Now we're not, that's not the goal. The goal is to get the kids educated, all right?
it was a debate whenever the administration or the school appeared to be not wanting to do the testing and hear the bad news.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you got to take your medicine. Okay, so the other thing I was just going to say, we won't go into, I told the kind of story, but we're talking about, I know it's a Missouri rule that we are volunteers,
Yeah.
but when I helped Doug get his new job in Minnesota, when I had several conference calls with the group of people who called me from up there, and after like the second or third conference call with about 7 or 8 of those folks, they were blown away actually that they wanted to know, do you think Doug would be receptive to giving them a raise, the school board members. I go, what? He goes, yeah, we only make $7,000 a year, and everybody around us makes $12,000 a year. You think, I go, well, first of all, you gotta understand that we get paid nothing. Actually, we get in trouble if they give us a stale sandwich at the end of a 6-hour meeting. And so, my second and third call with them, you could hear the whole group kind of chuckling in the background, and you guys do this for nothing? And then I say, on top of that, a lot of people who run for school board will spend $20,000 or $30,000 to get this non-paying job. They're just kind of like, they hired Doug so quick after he went through this down here. I got a Minnesota boy back in Minnesota.
But I don't think it's for nothing. I think it's bigger than a,
What's,
being on the board. I don't think it's for nothing.
I know, I can tell you that not getting paid actually carries a huge amount of weight with the legislature, the ones that actually know that you're not getting paid. And in fact, our board of directors has expressed a desire to never be paid because we feel that our lobbying efforts are greater. Because we don't have, there's no money incentive, you know? And so I think that it means that you're here for the kids. You're here for your community, you know? And it gives you a very strong voice, definitely in Jefferson City, but hopefully in your community as a whole. Although we've noticed that a lot of community members don't know that you're not paid. And so we've actually got some campaign not campaign stuff, but some stuff that districts can use to put out into the community explaining what a board member is, because a lot of people don't have a clue. A lot of our candidates don't have a clue. But at any rate, yes, that is true. That is not true in other states. In some states, it's actually a very well-paid position. But then the question is, why are you running? Is it for a paycheck? Or is
well,
it
because
you
for
care
a
about
paycheck,
your
I'm more okay with that than these people who spend $25,000 to run for this non-paying board. And all you gotta do is you look at the donors list and know what's wrong with our town. Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Oh, one other thing I wanted to let you know about. You know, our school district is about 160 years old. We've been David and I have been working on this. And this is quite outstanding since we're such an old district. They always compare us with new district, which is a mistake, Orange and Apples. But anyhow, here's what we found out. And this is amazing for us, guys. This is amazing for us, okay? This is why we're going to be great. Besides having a higher game, okay? We are the newest, in 160 years, the newest school board ever, meaning 6 of the 7 have been replaced in a 14-month period. Never happened in 160 years of our school district. Also, we're the youngest. Even with 2 old farts on here like me and Rick, we're still the youngest school board in the history of St. Joe School District, okay? Third of all, probably even most important and most braggadocious for us, we're the most diverse school board ever in the history of St. Joseph as well. And then kind of the touche for all the powers who want to control us, we're the least established, we're the least bought off, we're the least compromised. We're just plain people that are trying to serve our community for no pay at all. So those 4 factors, especially the first 3, I mean, we're going to build on that. The newest, the youngest, and the most diversified.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that you guys are willing to have this meeting today and to think of these things, it means you're already way ahead of the curve. Okay, yes.
Donna also gives us nice food. It's never stale.
There we go, there we go.
Don, I was just trying to
See
improve
if
it.
I send anything home with you.
He made his plate before he said that.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if there's anything else that I can do for you. I don't want to keep you guys, and we stand ready to help you, okay?
Susan,
you
we
so much.
we definitely appreciate you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Great
Thanks a
information.
lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 6, August 10th, engagement meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to briefly let you know, August 10th is when Don Schloman will be back from Vision Forward. I'm going to forward you guys an email with all the information. Show up to whatever you want to show up to. It's got a breakdown of 9 to 11 this, 11 to 1 this, 1 to 3 this, and you have I'm just gonna give you the opportunity to go to whatever you want to. You don't have to go to any of it if you don't want to, but.
Are they gonna have any recommendations? or-
Yep, well, he just all they're doing is gathering information from the staff and community, and then they're gonna bring a recommendation back to you in September as a Board of Education. But I thought maybe you guys might wanna sit in and listen to some of it, so.
Yeah.
They're doing they're asking all the admin teams, so there'll be 20 of us from the superintendent cabinet that will meet with them at 9 to 11, and then they'll meet with community patrons, and board members can choose to be part of any of it or part of none of it. But I'm just forwarding you an email, and it says Vision Forward on the top of it, so. That's fine.
Okay, this is not about Hilliard next week.
No.
Any other questions or comments? Good information. We need a motion to adjourn.
Just a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
I would just like to be on that, the SIP board.
The MSIP, okay? And Sarah had said something to me too, so if you two want to be the, okay.
Designees.
Yep.
But anyone can show up.
Oh, yeah, everybody can be part of it, they'll just be the two that,
Even outside folks, right?
yeah.
Just like finance committee and things like that.
Yeah,
I got a suggestion on who we met with this week for all that.
yeah, okay.
Great information. I need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
All second.
Yeah, I'll second it. We'll vote.
All right.
Call the vote.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Reader?
Yes.
Mr. Vandal?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Bye-bye now.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.
Get all my trash.